This is Rez Infinite, the 2023 VR re-release of a game that originally released over 2 decades ago for the Dreamcast and received its original VR treatment in 2016 when Sony released their first VR headset. It's a lauded rhythm shooter that has seen many tweaks and improvements, with the PSVR 2 release promising to be the best version yet. This released February 22nd, 2023 for the PSVR 2 headset and is available on damn near every platform you can think of in or out of VR and retails for roughly $30 US. Does the 22-year-old game stand the test of time? Is the PSVR 2 the best way to play? Do I think this game is insanely overrated? Let's find out. Before we get to it, if you enjoyed this video, then please don't forget to like, subscribe, and leave a comment about what you think about this game. Don't forget to tune into this channel every Thursday at 9 PM Eastern Time for the Virtual Boys podcast, where we talk all things VR. I'm Ryan for the VR Grid, and now on with the review. In Rez, it's up to you to venture into a malfunctioning AI and shoot down the various robots that are assailing her system. The game opens up with an all too brief cutscene before throwing you into the action, and while there is some light existential storytelling toward the end of the game, outside of that premise, any other narrative is non-existent, meaning Rez lives or dies on its gameplay. You control an avatar in a simulated system, with the core game having you on the rails as you soar through this digital world and enemies appear around you. There are 4 control options available to target those incoming drones, with most using or combining headset or controller tracking to target the enemies, while holding onto a face button to lock onto every target your reticle moves across. Upon releasing the button, you'll unleash your attacks, taking out every foe you have targeted, and while this is a dated reference, this plays very similar to the Panzer Dragoon series. All of those methods work fine enough, so depending upon your preference, there should be an option here for you. One of the major additions to the PSVR 2 release is the use of eye tracking, which is easy to miss as it's labeled as Type 4 under the control type options, so for my entire first playthrough, I didn't realize what I was missing. For starters, the eye tracking works great, and looking to target is pretty cool, especially when compared to the head track control, which keeps your reticle centered on your vision and forces a lot of neck bending to highlight the enemies that come from anywhere but right in front of you. With eye tracking, I still naturally moved my head to look at enemies, but I found my head moving much less as my eyes did a bulk of the work, and made for an overall more comfortable and easier experience thanks to my faster eye reactions. I never really understood the appeal of the gameplay in Rez, and while it works just fine, I don't find it very engaging, and even when there's a ton of stuff flying at my avatar, whom you view in third person, it just felt more frenetic than fun. Each of the 5 stages is broken up into 10 smaller levels, and throughout each you'll face a variety of enemies, have to collect power-ups, and try to avoid taking any damage while getting through that level as fast as possible. The better you do and the more upgrades you collect will upgrade your avatar, changing shape from a humanoid collection of rectangles to more tangible forms. Outside of the boss battles, I found the game to be easy with eye tracking, even feeling unfair at times thanks to even faster reaction time, and with no difficulty modifiers available, I found the main game to be largely unsatisfying, especially when you factor in that it takes about an hour to get through all the game's content. Each stage behaves in the exact same fashion, with some encounters changing up by shifting your view to either side of your avatar, so while the game brags about enemies coming from all around you, more often than not, they'll still appear within 180 degrees of where the camera is facing, so there's no real worry about having to spin around in circles. The boss battles do mix things up, as each will throw different attacks your way, and need to be taken out in different ways, be it destroying tentacles, walls, or just defending against the hordes of drones sent your way, with these final encounters being much more satisfying than the rest of the game. Outside of the main game, included here is Area X, and if there's one reason to not look past picking this up, it's this. But I'll get to that in just a minute. With the PSVR 2 release comes the promise of even more fidelity, as there appears to not only be a resolution bump, which makes sense, but for the first time also includes HDR, and in my time with the game, I didn't really notice the latter, even when hopping from the PS4 to the PS5 version of the game. Now, this is where things get a little tricky, as I think, at this point, Rez needs a sequel or a remake, as the visuals in here look alright for a 20-year-old game. It's the cleanest it's ever looked in VR, and while I did notice some vibrant colors sprinkled in throughout the game, I found the overall color palette to be dull considering the promises of synethesia, with a lot of the game overlaying simple images over black backgrounds. With much of the game throwing abstract visuals your way that react to your attacks and the beat, it can be cool when it all works, but with the bump in clarity, I honestly couldn't help but notice just how dated Rez looks, especially in the final stage, which dared to use animals and trees and so on that really do look like gaming assets from a bygone era. If you want to forgive it for being an old game ported to VR, then I guess that's fine, but for myself, I found the core game here to be, across the board, underwhelming. Now, back to Area X, and what I think is really the only reason to pick this up, outside of a trip down memory lane, as it not only showcases the features of the PSVR 2 headset, but updates the gameplay to modern standards, and if they made a sequel using the gameplay and visuals found here, then I'd be all on board for that. In Area X, gone are the rails, and you can now free roam these large environments, facing all new foes that are rendered with much higher detail than anything else in the game, while particle effects galore happen all around you all the time. It's a visual overload that is nothing short of mesmerizing, and while it won't take more than 15 minutes to get through it, you can choose to free roam and spend as much time in here as you'd like. Another boost to the overall gameplay is PSVR 2's use of haptics, which are used quite well in Rez, whether you choose to use DualSense or 2Sense controllers, as each pulses and vibrates with each shot fired while your headset also pulses to the beat. This does add a nice tactile layer to the game, and even though I'm not the biggest fan of Rez, those extra little vibrations do add a unique and positive layer to the game that I think anyone will appreciate. Rez has always been hailed for the synethesia I mentioned earlier, which for those that don't know is defined as the production of a sense impression relating to one sense or part of the body by stimulation of another sense or part of the body. Rez does try its best to blend video, audio, and haptics into a threesome of sensations, though I don't think the audio here works that great either. It's a collection of early 2000s custom-made electronic beats, which are fine enough, but it's the blending of those sounds from your shots that just feels overlaid on top of the soundtrack, making it sound more like noise than a nice blending of the two audio sources. Beeps and boops and other sounds overpower the soundtrack, turning much of this game to a cacophony of noise rather than slick beats, something the devs did a much better job in Tetris Effect. Spatial audio is here and works flawlessly, I guess, though once again, as a bulk of the action does happen ahead of you, other than hearing the sounds of your blast coming from left or right, it'll mostly be all those effects and the music playing that you'll notice before any nuanced 3D audio, making much of the experience feel quite messy, though there are moments in Area X where all this stuff blends together much more naturally. So, to answer my own questions, I feel like it's time to put this version of Rez to bed when it comes to VR, and I think Area X proves just how much more Enhanced can do with the game other than just re-releasing it over and over. It feels more dated than retro, and I'd much rather play their other VR rhythm title, Tetris Effect, which utilizes the tech so much better. The PSVR 2 version is the best way to play Rez, and if you already own the PS4 version, then the $10 upgrade isn't criminal, I suppose, but the base cost of $30 just seems way too pricey for an old game ported to VR, with one additional, but very cool stage that shows the game's true potential. Area X is stunning and fun to chill or play in, is a showcase for the headset, and one I would put newbies to VR in, but outside of that, I don't think what's here is anything special, and in fact, it's quite dull. I'm going to give Rez Infinite for the PSVR 2 a 6 out of 10. Outside of Area X, I don't understand the appeal for this game at all. If you enjoyed this review, please don't forget to do all the things to help support the channel. And that's it for this one. Thank you so much for watching.